I appreciate you being, let me get this. I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate you going on this journey with me. So let me share my screen. Okay, and I need to minimize so that I can make sure that I can see everybody. So again, we're going to talk about the Crown Act. And I want you to take a look at this picture. So the Crown Act, creating a respectful and open workplace for natural hair. That's what this law is all about, the Crown Act. So the history of our nation, as you know, is riddled with laws and societal norms that equate Blackness and the associated physical traits for African Americans, things such as our hair, our lips, our hips, as they say, you know, to be a badge of inferiority, sometimes subject to separate and unequal treatments. We've always heard the term separate but equals, but actually it has been separate but unequal. African Americans are continuing to evolve and working to eliminate the stereotypes that we've been seeing in the media, that we've been seeing in our schools, that we've been seeing in our workplace and our communities. And we're continuing to evolve. You know, we're trying to eliminate these stereotypes, unjust laws, double standards that we all know, and the right to be unapologetically authentic. The Crown Act, as I said, which stands for Creating a Respectful and Open Workplace for Natural Hair, was passed in California. And as we all know, California is usually the first to get things going. It bans hair discrimination, and the Crown Act is an extension of Title VII of the Civil Rights Acts of 1964. So as I go through this journey, and as you go through this journey with me, we want to take the truth. The truth comes in pieces. So I want to be able to put these pieces together so that you can see the big picture. The Crown Act is about fostering diversity, inclusion, and belonging. Disparities are displayed in all forms, and it affects all, it's, give me a minute, I get excited sometimes. And it affects our evidence all around us. As I said, they can be seen in our workplace, they can be seen in our schools, they can be seen in our policies, they disrupt our lives. African Americans continue to experience the effects of racism in our justice system, our housing, our healthcare. I've done a presentation, I believe a couple of weeks ago, and it got more into, you know, how we are affected as far as in the healthcare field. But many people believe that cultural humility is a way to begin the healing process by including diversity, fostering diversity, inclusion, and to building a bridge to creating a new wave of trust within the African-American community. We know it's going to take a while, it's going to take a long time, but it's going to take all of us to do our part to make this thing happen. So when we're talking about, you know, the hair discrimination, hair specifically in the Black community has been critically important for years because of the culture that surrounds it and specific pressures of Western standards, as we call those Eurocentrics. Individuals in the communities have been racially discriminated against in schools and the workplace. The effects of this discriminations have left those in the Black community feeling uncomfortable with their natural hair. I know me, for instance, and as I said, I'll be giving you some of my personal stories. I know for years I would not braid my hair. Even when I went on interviews, I never wore braids, you know, to work. I never went on interviews with braids because I always felt that it would be, I would not get the job. And I think most of us have felt like that at times. So we found that the effects of this discrimination have left those feeling, you know, unacceptable, the unacceptable standards, because we weren't catering to, again, what we call the Eurocentric standards of straight hair, so to speak. Some of these alternatives hairstyles like chemical relaxers were always the healthiest choices. And we're finding that today, and I'll get more into that because I'm starting to see more and more things that are coming across as far as class action lawsuits, because they're finding that those chemicals have caused some really bad effects on African Americans. And I'll touch a little bit more on that. So what I ended up doing is I wanted to do a Google search, right? I've always tried to do a Google search to find out, okay, what does unprofessional hairstyles look like in the African-American community? And these were some of the styles that came up. Now, as I look at them, for me, I don't see them as being, unprofessional. But when you do your Google search, as far as we're saying those standards, these are what comes up as unprofessional hairstyles for the African-American community. So while today Black hair is considered as fashionable as it is unprofessional, there was a time when lawmakers forced Black women to literally keep their hair under wraps. Yet people of color continue to experience discrimination regularly. There was a survey done by AARP where it showed that 81% of working women ages 50 who experienced discrimination in the regular felt pressure to look or act a certain way at work, right? And that meant, like I said, where I wouldn't go on an interview with braids. I most of the time had gone to the salons where I got perms so that I can make sure that my hair was straight and relaxed so that I felt like I was being acceptable and that I felt that I would get the job. So when the survey was done, it was showing that 81% of women felt that they had to change their standards in order to fit in. And I'll use that word, fit in. At the workplace, Black women were 1.5 more likely to have reported having been sent home from the workplace because of their hair. And I can tell you, being in management, I've seen this happen on many occasions where some of my colleagues were sent home and asked to change their hair, either because of the color. And I didn't think the color was bad. It wasn't that it was blue or red or pink hair that was coming in. It was just natural streaks that blended in, which I found, pretty much strange when we see that our white counterparts often come in with blonde hair and we know they're not natural blondes, and most of the time they're not sent home. So we see a lot of those disparities in the workplace when it comes to African Americans coloring their hair versus our white counterparts. So typically, as you look at this chart, typically Black women have higher labor force participation rate than other women, meaning a higher unemployed and looking for work. Again, for instance, in 2019, Black women's labor force participation rate was 60.5% compared with 56.8% for white women. Even in 2020, in the midst of the pandemic, their labor force participation rate was 58.8% compared to 56.2% for women overall. So with that said, it's showing that more Black women are in the workplace and therefore having to conform to Eurocentric styles in order to at least get past the interview process in order to be hired, right? So not only do we see this in the workplace, we also see these discriminatory practices in school as well. I wanted to point out this particular story here, this discriminatory practices in school. So what happened, I'm not sure if any of you have heard of this story. So in April 2017, Maya and Deanna, who were twins, these are two Black high school students in Massachusetts, were banned from all extracurricular activities at their school, including prom. They weren't able to go to prom. And the reason was they had braids. They were asked to take the braids out and they refused. After they refused to take the braids out, the school slapped multiple hours of detention on them and threatened to suspend them for violating hair and makeup policy. Again, these are policies that are in place that says Black women cannot wear their hair, their natural hair. This causes trauma, it causes mental stress. And it's something that, for some of us can last for years. I've had these conversations with some women and it brings up some, as I said, for some of us, it brings up some fond memories. And for others, it brings up some memories that causes some emotions, some PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, or post-traumatic stress from bad experiences that they experienced as a child or that they experienced at work. So what ended up happening in this particular case, the good thing about this particular case was the community rallied behind the Cook sisters. They put pressure on the schools and on the state to change those policies and laws. And basically what happened in July, Massachusetts became the 18th state to sign the Crown Act into law, giving protection to more than 500,000 Black citizens in that state against race-based discrimination. So the Crown Act is working. Again, like I said, we got work to do, but there's always more work to be done. And I wanted to show this one. I'm not sure if any of you saw this, and this was something that I had to share about Andrew Johnson. I'm not sure if you heard about this hair discrimination with him. I want to play this clip for you. It's really a quick clip. So let me set it up for you. He was a wrestler in high school, and because he had been having a dreads for years, and then they decided that, okay, this is no longer acceptable. And if you don't cut your dreads, you can't participate right there on the spot. You can't participate. So let me show this really quickly.
To a story that's getting attention from all over the country tonight. A referee at a high school wrestling match in New Jersey told a wrestler he had to cut his dreadlocks or forfeit the match. So with the clock ticking, that wrestler, a teenager, chose to let the team trainer cut his hair. But that video is now sparking outrage and questions about that ref's decision. Here's ABC's Lindsay Davis.
Disgust tonight over this video now circulating the internet of this moment of humiliation. New Jersey high school wrestler Andrew Johnson having his dreadlocks cut by a trainer before a match. He was forced to have his hair cut by a referee in order to compete or forfeit the match. It's standard for wrestlers with long hair to have the option to cover their heads, but the referee, Alan Maloney, would not allow it.
His hair's always been like that, so for them to now bring it up is out of line.
The Buena Superintendent of Schools releasing this statement today. The referee will no longer be permitted to officiate any contests that include any Buena Regional School District student athletes. Johnson's win propelling his team to victory. But with a split lip and reluctant raise of his hand, he walks off the mat looking as if he'd just been defeated.
I want to stop it right there. I noticed, I don't know if you guys noticed the look on his face. Again, this is something that's going to affect him probably for years to come. As I said, I've had conversations with women who, when we've had these conversations, they reflect on something that happened to them at a younger age. I think about Andrew Johnson in the same content. You know, what happens when years from now, when he has this conversation? This is going to be a traumatic experience that is going to continue to haunt him. The problem that we see in America right now is there's not enough Black therapists who can understand and have that conversation with Andrew as far as what he went through, right? And when you look at it, every time I look at this and I look at the person that's cutting his hair, it didn't look like she took the time to go, okay, let me just cut a little. It was like she really went into it. And I can tell that, you know, this has been a traumatic experience for him that he's going to have to deal with for years. And as we said, you know, people look and go, well, the Crown Act, well, what is that about? It's deeper than the surface. So when we look at the African-American community, it's often held to a set of rules, policies, and principles and beauty standards that apply differently and usually more rigorously than other groups of people. I'm not sure if you guys remember, for some of us, like I said, I looked around the room and I know some of us remember the movie 10, right? When we talk about cultural appropriation, I wanted to show these two individuals. Patrice Rushen, who's a musician, a pianist, or Grammy winner, was known for wearing braids and with the beads in her hair. But oftentimes, as we said, people looked at her as far as, oh, you know, she needs to take those braids out, those beads out. That's a Black thing. But the moment that Bo Derek, as we saw, for those of you who saw a picture of her running out of the water down the beach with the braids in her hair and the beads, oh, this was a wonderful thing. It was beautiful. Whereas when, again, those double standards, when African Americans wear their hair a certain way, it's unacceptable. But the moment, as we say, our white counterparts, you know, where then they're seen as, oh, this is a great thing. This is a wonderful thing. So we look at and we talk about cultural exploitation is the appropriation of elements of a subordinate culture by a dominant culture without substandard reciprocity, permission, compensation, understanding, or appreciation. And that's what we saw in this particular case. We continue to see these cultural appropriation that are okay for one group, but are looked upon and frowned upon by another group. Again, that's the whole purpose of the Crown Act, to say, look, we need to make some changes. We need to, again, look at, you know, diversity We need to look at inclusion. We need to look at belonging. So, and I think all of you have heard these standards. We've heard stuff such as nappy, kinky, dirty, shame. Is that your real hair? I don't know if any of you had this. I've had the thing, can I touch it? Right? Good hair, coarse. There are constant differences between how Black hair is seen, described, and depicted in our society. A noticeable and usually significant difference is seen in media advertising. We see this all the time. We see it in the workplace. We just saw it at the schools and in our daily conversation. Years of cultural disparities has taught us to see Black hair as something negative and unattractive. If you guys remember the little sitcom from years ago, The Little Rascal, we all saw Buckley and how his hair was displayed. A person's hair is linked to their genes. And as for those of you who may be here who are hairdressers, I found that there are only really 4 types of hair. There's a type, and they come in those sub shapes as far as there's the type 1, which is straight, which is the A, B, and C. There's type 2, which is wavy, A, B, and C. Type 3, curly, and type 4, coily. A study was done, and it showed that, you know, as quiet as it's kept, that on average, a good 80% or higher for African American is considered curly hair. Oftentimes we look at it and we see terms like what we've been told is nappy or kinky or coarse, when actually it's curly. If you actually look when you wash your hair, it does curl up. But again, we've been made to believe that, you know, it's a bad thing. And one subject that most people aren't talking about, and there's not a lot of study that's being done, especially when we're talking about traumatic experience, are our biracial family. Biracial people are one of the fastest growing population in the US. From 2000 to 2010, the number of self-identified biracial people increased by over a third. Biracial hair disparity is normally an unspoken subject. Most of the time it's something that we don't talk about in public. Those are those private conversations that we have either at home or among ourselves as far as, you know, hair. What we're finding with the biracial group is, you know, they're kind of caught in the middle. You know, either I'm not accepted by one or the other. And most of the time it has to do with, you know, either my hair or my skin color, right? And this is a traumatic experience that they're dealing with. So we're finding that very little research has been done on this subject, and more needs to be done. Biracial individuals are often caught in a crossfire, and society is constantly suggesting they choose which side of the color line that they need to stand on. I was in at an event recently, and I was talking to a biracial individual, and she said to me, why should I have to choose? Why should I have to choose which side of the fence I need? She said, I'm both. I'm African American and I'm Hispanic. Why should I have to make a choice, right? So biracial hair is a complicated term, and it does not refer specifically to one type of hair or skin type. But again, more research needs to be done on this. As you see, it's unspoken. So the more we learn about the historical significance of our hair and culture, the sooner we can master, embrace our natural hair, and rid ourselves of negative and self-hatred. But let us not forget, promote Black unity and love for all our unique physical characteristics. And it's time to get beyond the stereotype. We need to, again, be more diverse. We need to be more inclusive, and we need to be more helping our biracials and everybody else feel that they belong. So with that said, I wanted to just do a history, the history of the Black hair and the beauty cultures. The Blacks have been using their West African roots along with their own artistries and the uniqueness of Black cultures. The crown we never take off, a history of Black hair through the ages. And I want to take you through, again, take you on this journey. The first African hairstyle that were seen in the New World were variations of traditional West African braiding patterns. These styles, however, were often removed by what we call the masters, who wanted their slaves to look, and let me go back, who wanted the enslaved. And I want to try to change that language also. I think we need to get away from saying slaves to enslaved, because we were not slaves. We were human beings that were our ancestors who were enslaved. And I know it's going to take a while for me to get used to this and us to begin to change the narrative. But let me take you through some of the histories of the Black hair. So one of the earliest expression of Black hair would undoubtedly be what we call the cornrows or the sugar cane, commonly cited as far back as 3000 BC. It symbolized status, ethnicity, wealth, and rank. So when you look at these, the cornrows, or as they once said, the sugar canes, Black hair, these cornrows were used to send a message. Oftentimes the enslaved weren't allowed to learn to read, but what they still was able to get their messages through. And if you look at this, you can look at the patterns and you can see how it can give a description of maybe, okay, if my hair, you can see how it shows this particular cornfield. And I want you guys to look at it and reflect and see how those messages were relayed just within these cornrows, right? I was really impressed by this, and I want you to take a moment to look at that. So these cornrows were used to help individuals escape slavery. Since individuals, as I said, were not allowed to read or write, these messages were done in the braidings of their hair to give an idea of, okay, this is where we need to meet up, or this is where, you know, things are happening. So they served as maps that was created by using curved braids, tightly braided, to represent the road to escape. And also they was used that when they did escape, they could hide seeds, you know, so that they can have seeds to plant for food. So they was used for a number of different things. And we can also look at, you know, oftentimes we've heard the term, you know, nappy, as I talked about, but we can go back to, for those of us who are Bible scholars, to the book of Revelation, when it talked about Jesus with his hair like lamb's wool. And you can look at the pictures and see here that, you know, when we talk about Black hair, it's not that it's just been around recently, it's been around for years, and it served us, and it served us well. So when we look at Africa is a large continent, as we all know, which consists of innumerable tribes. For those of you who had an opportunity to see the Woman King, it was depicted where they were showing, you can look at a person's hair and be able to tell what tribe they were from. So the history and traditions of African hair within tribes and the cultural significance of braiding is deep and long. So some of the hair, the tribes and cultural depicted your community, your age. It often looked at your marital status, your wealth, your power, your social position, and your religion. So while Zulu among the primary tribes, each tribe had its own culture and tradition. And as I said, for those of you who had an opportunity to see the Woman King, there was the one person where her hair, and they was able to tell what tribe she was from. So elaborate patterns are done for special occasions like weddings, social ceremonies, or war preparations. And we saw this, and it kind of aligns with, you know, what we know about the Native American, you know, when they used certain, when they were going to war, certain paints that they put on their face. Also, even with the African Americans, I didn't have a picture here, but it also shows how they use certain paints and different things like that to set the tone for whether they was going to war, or like you said, to determine what tribe they were in. So again, you know, the hair is definitely sets the tone to be able to identify tribes and cultural significance as far as, you know, their status within their different cultures, different tribes, excuse me. So understanding that Black hair has deeply rooted origins is essential to fostering inclusion and diversity. Hairstyles such as locks or what we call Bantu knots have been around as early as 2500 BC. The Hindu scriptures depict the god Shiva here wearing twisted locks of hair known as Jata, J-A-T-A-A, while Bantu knots, known to be worn by individuals of the Zulu tribe, stem from the terms of identifying subgroups within South Africa. And I wanted to put this here really because I wanted to give an idea of how far back, our hair went, all the way back to the book of Revelation. We're looking at 2500 BC, so I just wanted, to kind of paint that picture about, how important Black hair is. So I wanted to go back to 1785. I want to talk a little bit about the Teagon Law, which was a law, again, everything continues to evolve, right? It was in New Orleans in 1700, was a widely diverse place. You had Creoles, you had French, you had settlers from France and Spain. And what was happening is because, you had these mixed racial groups, they were able to do all types of fancy things to their hair. They was able to put beads in it, to wear it up, to braid it. And unfortunately, the white women weren't able to do that. And what ended up happening is they went to the governor and said, wait a minute, we don't like the fact that they're able to do all of these things to their hair. In other words, they're stealing our husbands. They're causing our husbands to look their way. And they told the governor, you need to do something. We want something done because these women are enticing our husbands. So what the governor ended up doing is he passed a law, which is called the Teagon Law. And the Teagon Law pretty much says that you cannot wear your hair in public, that you have to wrap it, which is where we get a lot of the wrappings from. So eventually what ended up happening is they decided, okay, I'll go ahead and I'll wrap my hair. But what they ended up doing is they began to wrap their hair, and to make sure that they stayed within the law, they began to start designing those wraps. Basically, they was using ribbons and beads and flowers and different things like that. In other words, I am complying with the law. I'm wrapping my hair, but yet I'm adding these extra things to it so that they can make sure that they comply with the law. And I wanted to show these pictures depicting how that has evolved as far as to get you a better understanding of how this has come about with the head wrapping, with the beads, and with the flowers. And most of us know Billie Holiday was known for wearing a white gardenia in her hair, which is pretty much kind of her fashion statement. And this came from, again, this was something that evolved from the 1700s under that Teagon Law. So a Teagon fashion statement, long accustomed to making, like most of us, we're pretty resilient. We can usually make the best out of a bad situation. So our positive association with the Teagon stems from Black women in Louisiana, including, countless people who have, again, been resilient and turned something that should have been negative into something that was positive. So let's move on to the 1872, the hot comb. Now this one brings me back some memories too, and I can't say if they're good, bad, or indifferent, but I can tell you that I remember having to have my hair, myself and my siblings, where we had to go through getting our hair pressed, right? So in 1872, an invention by Marcel invented what we call, most of us call it the straightening comb, the pressing comb, the hot comb, and I remember as a child, we would always have to, hold our ear so that it wouldn't be burned by this hot comb. And even today, I found that when I go to the hairdresser, I'm always holding my ear, even though they would be at the top of my head. And it's just something, again, it's just an experience that I went through as a child where I would get the tip of my ear burned. So I found that whenever I go, I can be having a conversation with the hairdresser, we'll be laughing, we'll be talking, but the moment she gets close to my ear, all conversation stops. And I begin to hold my ear. She's like, oh, I'm okay, go ahead and let it go. Nope. Nope. The moment you get close to my ear, no. And I say that's a traumatic experience that I experienced that has carried on with me all of these years, the hot comb. But it was something that was invented in 1872. So the decline and the rebirth of the Taiwan law by the early 1800s changed when the hot comb came out. The hot comb was an invention developed in France as a way for women with coarse or curly hair to achieve a fine, straight look traditionally modeled by historical Egyptian women. So the revolutionizing of Black hair. Most of us look at it as Madam C.J. Walker, but I want to make sure that Annie Malone gets her credit too. They did not create the hot comb, which most people think. Basically, they revolutionized modern day entrepreneurs for Black women by creating hair products. This happened in the early 1900s. They were both self-made entrepreneurs who created hair products centered around Black hair and became very wealthy. As we know today, you know, the industry for the Black hair care products are in the multi-million dollars every year. So hairstyles at the time, however, were influenced by, again, Eurocentric standards of beauty. And both these women took advantage of that by producing healthy products that would help to, with the hair as far as, you know, chemicals to help straighten it, to help condition it, to help it be a little bit more manageable, so to speak. So I wanted to make sure that I, you know, definitely gave credit to Annie Malone, because I think oftentimes in history she's overlooked. Most of us look at Madam C.J. Walker, but both women were self-made millionaires, but I definitely wanted to make sure that I gave credit to Annie Malone for the hair products that she helped produce to help revolutionize Black hair products. And I wanted to make sure that I did not forget the Black barbers. So Black barbership, as we know, are so much more than just a skillful establishment where men and women alike wander in to receive a haircut. The Black barbershop has been the central location for meetings. It was basically the hub, especially during the civil rights movement. It's also the place that we use, especially today, to get the word out when we're trying to especially cater to the African-American man. Right now, we know that we're dealing with COVID, and we're finding that, of course, because of the mistrust, a lot of African-Americans, especially men, are not, you know, getting the vaccination or getting the information. But we found that, you know, that barbershop is the place. It's always served as a place where people can, where the African-American man can go and talk about things as far as, you know, politics, health issues. And it's also been a place where, you know, where it was considered a safe haven. Black barbershops have long been and continue to be, as I said, a central hub. It has been considered a place where, you know, people have congregated, such as elected officials, when it comes time for, you know, getting the word out and having those deep conversations that aren't normally talked about in public. So during the 1860s, a former slave who was Peter Bridge effectively monopolized the barbershop market in especially in Los Angeles. So they found that what was happening is because the barbers were so skilled, they were finding that a lot of the white constituents were coming to their shop to have their haircuts. The barbers have found that they were making, some of them had became millionaires, but because, like anything, when they saw that the Black community was thriving, laws were put into place that says, oh no, this is unacceptable. They can't just do this. Now they have to go to school and they have to become licensed, even though they were already doing it. Again, laws were put into place that says no. And I want you to reflect on what I'm saying. If we go back to the Teagan law, as far as saying, wait a minute, we had white women that says, no, 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 they're getting too much attention, put a law into place. And now with the Black barbers say, no, 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 they're making too much money, put a law into place that says, no, they can't do this. They have to go and get licensed, so that basically what ended up happening is several of them ended up, losing their business because they didn't have the license. But lo and behold, like I said, African Americans are always resilient. There was the Tyler Harbor College, where the gentleman decided, okay, what I'll do is I'll open up a barber school and I'll teach them the proper way so that they can get their license, so that they can begin to, again, be resilient and open up. And what ended up happening is we found that more and more barbershops started to open back up. So Alonzo Herndon, Herndon, was the first Black millionaire who kickstarted his empire with the single barbershop. And Willie Lee Morrill, a multimillionaire barber, was a pioneer in the Black hair care industry. So again, I wanted to just point out that every time, we found that, Black hair begins to thrive, someone comes in and say, no, 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 let's make some changes. Let's put some policies in place. And we saw that also in Hollywood. So in Hollywood, we found that as, we saw the look change as far as that Eurocentric. We saw people like Dorothy Dandridge. We saw Joyce Bryant. And for those of you who may not know, Joyce Bryant was considered the blonde bombshell who passed away last month in November. She was known for her signature silver hair and tight mermaid dress. You see Little Richard and Esther Rolle. And the thing that I wanted to point out about Esther Rolle was, oftentimes, she was harassed for those of you who don't know, Esther Rolle was the star of Good Time that came out in the 70s, which was a popular sitcom. And oftentimes she was being pressured to change her natural hair so that she could be more likable. And she stood her ground and she did not. So society was unabashedly more accepting of those European traits and such notables as we talked about. You talk about Dorothy Dandridge, you talk about Joyce Bryant, Lena Horne, and Diane Carroll. These hairstyles in the Black community were often described as we said, fried, dyed, laid to the side, which was referred to as those perms. As more awareness of self-love in the Black community came, it was like, no, we decided that we're going to change. So the Civil Rights Movement in the 60s. The Civil Rights Movement in the 60s sparked the return of wearing Black hair in its natural texture. You had people like Angela Davis, you had Don Cornelius, you had Pam Grier, you had the Jackson Five, where it was like, we're going to wear our natural hair. It was a sign of liberation, right? And we all know, for those of us who were brought up in the 60s and 70s, the Afro was the way to go. And it had to be big, it had to be round, it had to be just right. So this movement says that we will no longer live by those European status that we have to wear our hair straight. It was like, we're Black, we're proud, and we're going to wear our hair in this natural form. So a move has started to come, change has started to come, but some of us didn't always, go with that. So as we see in 1976, for those that decided, even though this change had come, it wasn't that, everybody was acceptable. But what happened was in 1976, the first ever natural hair discrimination case went to the U.S. Court of Appeals. It was Jenkins versus Blue Cross Mutual Hospital. This case is, what happened was, she refused, like Esther Rolle, to go with the Eurocentric style. Basically, she was saying, wait a minute, I have the credentials, I know what I'm doing, I'm just as experienced as anybody else, and you're not going to give me a promotion because I refuse to change my afro. So she decided to sue him, and she won her lawsuit. The U.S. Court of Appeal for the 7th Circuit District decided in her favor ruling that afros are protected by the Civil Rights Act and set a precedent for fighting hair discrimination in the workplace. This was one of the first, and as we see how things have evolved in the Black hair care. So let's talk about style and grace. We all know Grace Jones and some other things that happened. And as I said, the thing that I admire about our African Americans is we can make a bad situation good. We are resilient like that. The Black hair movement continues to encourage women and men of African descent to embrace and celebrate their Afro texture hair with style and grace. And as I said, I had to put Grace Jones here because she was one that was breaking all types of standards. She was not one to comply. Grace Jones, she's a native of Jamaica, refused to worry about the naysayer. She owned her Blackness with her unique hairstyle, her body shape, her elongated neck, her prominent cheekbones, and her clean-cut jawlines and intimidated characters didn't stop her rise to the top as a model. She was an actress, not was, is. Let me take that back because she's still around. She just did a concert just recently I saw. But I wanted to touch on how resilient African Americans are. If you see, we see Bobby Brown here, Bobby Brown, the singer. I don't know if you guys remember when he wore what we call the Gumby look. This wasn't something that he decided, oh, I just want to cut my hair like this. This was a mistake. This was a mistake that his barber made, and he decided, okay, I'm just going to go with it. And it became stylish. Let's also look at the duo Salt and Pepper. So we're talking about Pepper, where we started seeing the style where one side of the hair was long and one was short. And she went on the Steve Harvey show and she explained what happened. She was saying that her sister had gotten her license and put a perm in her hair. And we're talking about perms again, and it burnt it out. It burnt half her hair. So she decided, okay, I'll just go with it. I'll make it work. And that's how we came up with this style that you see that the duo Salt and Pepper wore. Again, style and grace. We make a bad situation, we turn something bad and we make it positive. However, it's not with consequences. So as we see for decades, the styling of Black hair evolved from natural weave, perms, to jerry curls, to wigs and braids. So studies recently conducted have revealed that beauty products mainly marked to Black women have been found to contain highly toxic chemical linked to breast cancer. I see that Miss Phyllis is on here today, and I wanted to, refer to a study that Healthy Heritage did when they did some studies on, the effects of the chemicals in the hair. And we're finding, as I stated now, I'm seeing more and more class actions, lawsuits that are coming out. And based on this study, The Cost of Beauty, they found that a lot of these chemicals are doing significant damages. Not only, as you see in the picture here, damages to the scalp, and they're believing that they're also linked to such things as, breast cancer, uterine cancer, because we had to endure these so-called Eurocentric health standards. So this research was led to understand that although breast cancer risks were high, most women struggle with the thought of even letting these hair care products go, even after learning they were harmful, because of how important hair is in the Black community. And as I showed you before, these are traditions that have been going on for years and years and years. Even though we know that Black women have found that some of these products are harmful because of having to be accepted, even though we have the Crown Act law that is in place, there are still signs of discrimination when we're finding that people are not being hired because they are wearing their natural hair. So several women also cited that Black culture as to why hair is important, referred to, as I've stated, childhood and how their mothers and extended family taught them to view hair either directly or indirectly through unstated expectations of acceptance. Again, when we talk about, mental health, mental wellness, it's something that is deeply rooted that goes back. But times are changing slowly but surely. But we still, again, we have work to do. What we're finding though, that even though most people have some, negative connotation about, hip hop, but we're finding that the birth of hip hop has gave way to more creative expression of hairstyling. We can go back, we looked at Tupac, who began to wear what we call the do-rag. We're finding that braids are becoming more I don't know what word to use for it, but just the different designs, and we saw that in the 80s, Kid and Play, how now we're seeing the different, haircuts, the high tops, the different styles, even now where we're seeing the haircuts with different designs in them. These natural hairs have reemerged in present day and provide positive Black hair representation in both popular cultures, but not without issues, right? So the reemerging of natural hair. So social media, although social media didn't exist in the early Black Power movement in the 60s and the 50s, it has played a massive role in the mobilization and impact of the modern natural hair movement that became widespread for various reasons. In the early 2000s, natural hair content surfaced online in various settings, from discussion forums, personal blogs, and social medias. Although we've come a long way, we still have work to do, which is the reason for the Crown Act. So the journey and the liberation of Black hair is far from over. There are legislators who worked hard to make sure that the Crown Act became a nationwide law to prohibit race-based discrimination in schools and the workplace. And I definitely want to make sure that we recognize that Senator Holly Mitchell was the one who introduced the bill. She said it was about inclusion. It was about pride. It was about choice. Having a choice whether I decide I wanted to wear my hair either natural, whether I wanted to use chemicals, or whether I wanted to wrap it, right? The law protects the rights of Black Californians to choose to wear their hair in its natural form, with pressures to conform to Eurocentric norms should no longer be an issue. We found that since California, as we said, California is always the first, passed the Crown Act in 2019, other states like New York, Washington, and we saw Massachusetts with the twin sisters, and Oregon have also signed the act into law. I did a recent survey, or I did a recent this with St. Louis, and found that St. Louis, Missouri, which is where I kind of grew up, they also passed the Crown Act. And we're finding that oftentimes most of these laws are coming about because we have Black women or Black politicians in office, right? And I tell people that what happened is those same children that used to traumatize you and used to bully you grew up to be your supervisors, your boss, your elected officials, right? But also on the other side of that, we have our Black women and Black men who are there to fight those battles, to make sure that equal protection is put into place, to make sure that diversity is there, to make sure that inclusion is there. I'm not sure if any of you guys saw Trevor's farewell speech, Trevor Norton's farewell speech from the Daily Show, I believe, and he gave credit to Black women. He was saying if it were not for Black women, a lot of these laws, his fame would have not been such. So we want to make sure that we give a shout out to those Black women and those elected officials that are making a difference in ensuring that diversity and inclusion is on the table at all times. So we're finding that creating a respectful and open workplace for those with natural hair is moving along strongly, right? It's helping us with our mental health, with our mental wellness, and being able to say that, we are enough, that I am validated. It's a way for us to begin to heal. Recently, the Crown Act is all about liberation and social transformation. There was a big natural hair photo shoot, and I can't remember when this was done, but I remember seeing this where they're celebrating. We're beginning to celebrate our natural hair. It's an opportunity for modern day Black Americans to take a lead in the reconstruction process and express their independence from a history of oppression that we've often had to deal with. While the landscape of hair industry has changed dramatically over the years, in 2019, consumers were seeking more natural, organic, and eco-friendly products that are alcohol-free, skin-friendly, and allergenic-free. We found the African-American hair industry is estimated to exceed $2.5 billion. This project excludes hair accessories such as wigs and extensions, but more and more women are starting to use natural products as opposed to using chemicals that are damaging their hair and causing, such things as we said, cancer and urinary cancers. So however we choose to wear our crowns, the future of Black hair will continue to evolve. Black hair tells the history of our heritage. It tells our versatility. It shows our resilience. It speaks to us as a people. Whether we have a law or not, Black hair symbolizes our strength, our power, our beauty, and identifies and will continue to stand the test of time. I want to make sure that I give enough time so that we can have a conversation so that you can share, again, some of your experiences. But I want to leave you kind of like with this quote. It says, "Death asks life, why does everyone love you but hate me?" And life replied, "Because I'm the beautiful lie and you're the painful truth." Oftentimes we don't want to face the truth. And I hope that the information that I gave you, again, has set the tone to validate, some of what you are feeling. I hope that it allowed some healing based on the information and gave you some understanding of how far we've come, the whole role of Black hair, that it is based on, a culture, a tradition. And usually what ends up happening is when I do this in person, I especially like to work with some of the younger people. One of the activities that we do, it gives them a chance to use some cloth and some beads and flowers and different things so that they can decorate their hair, so that they get engaged, so that we can have that conversation. So I will stop sharing my screen right now. And I definitely want to kind of open up the floor to have a conversation. And as I said, I've shared some of, my childhood fond memories and some of the trauma I've gone through and some of the trauma I've seen in the workplace and at school. And I want to open up the floor to have a dialogue, to ask the question, have any of you experienced any traumatic experiences that have affected you to this day? Because we can think back on Andrew Young, the teenager, and as I said, every time I look at that, I remember his face. And the question is, who's there to talk him through this? Who's there to make sure that he's okay, right? This is going to be something that, like myself, that he's going to carry with him for years and years and years, that particular experience. And as I've stated, I've had some conversation and it becomes very, very emotional. So at this time, I wanted to open up the floor. You can turn on your cameras if you like, and let's have a conversation. I think we have about another 45, what is it, about 30, 45 minutes? Oh, no, we're at 11:30. I'm sorry, Mindy. Mindy's like, no. Okay, because I want to make sure we have time to do the surveys as well. So I believe I saw Phyllis on here. Phyllis, I did want to ask if you can give a little bit more information on the study that your group did when it came to the finding out about how some of these products are affecting Black women and association with cancer. Are you there, Phyllis?
Yes, I am, Hazel. Hi, good morning, everyone. How are you? I hope you're all well. Thank you for inviting me to share, Hazel, this morning. My name is Phyllis Clark. For those of you that do not know me, I am the CEO of the Healthy Heritage Movement, servicing the Inland Empire. And one of the most important studies that we have conducted over maybe, April, you can jump in whenever you want to as well. I think over the last 4 or 5 years, it's called the Cost of Beauty Project. And the Cost of Beauty Project, we conducted in the African American community, partnering with Loma Linda Behavioral Health Department, as well as the Healthy Heritage Movement. And our aims were to identify the behavioral patterns in the African American community, female community, using hair and personal care products in over the course of their lifespan. And it was amazing to find out what the answers to our questions were and are. We surveyed over 250 women, African American, or women that identified themselves as African American. And we asked them questions like, when did you start using chemicals on your hair? When did you start bathing with soaps? And what type of products did they use through the course of their lifespan to when we reached them? And we found out that most of the women used products that were targeted to African American women, that were brands that became very, very prominent in households, but not necessarily the safest products. So we, in collaborations with other agencies, we have put together a study that provide the community the results of what we found. So it is really important. The moral of this story is it is really important that we know and identify the products that are targeted to specifically to African American women, because it affects our reproductive systems and many other areas of our lives. And that is the extension of the Crown Act. Don't discriminate just because we want to wear our hair natural, and then also don't discriminate because you're putting in chemicals in products that you know that will give you more profit, and it may not benefit our health.
Thank you, Phyllis.
Thank you, Hazel. I'm sorry.
Thank you for sharing. I wanted you to elaborate a little bit more on the study, because I know I read through the study, and even with that said, the study helped me because as I said, for years, because I've always worked in administration, so to speak, or worked for places like, maybe city attorneys, where, you're the first person that they see and they expect you to look a certain way. For years, every week, I was at the hair salon, using those chemicals. And I did find out that I ended up having some fibroid tumors that, based on the studies, I'm finding that may have been the cause, because I had been using those chemicals in my hair. So with that said, I did want to hear, I see a gentleman here. I did want to hear from a man's perspective. Is it James? Can Can you speak on it from a man's perspective, especially when we're talking about, you know, now that men are starting to wear their hair either in longer and not so much as, you know, cut, but it is different.
So just for the on a male's perspective, I mean, a lot of what I've seen, not only am I a licensed barber myself, but just going through the experiences, you know, myself personally, I'm bald now, but I did have hair and I did go through that process myself, and just knowing and understanding that, you know, sometimes, you know, you see these nicer hairstyles, or you see the other cultural groups with these different types of hairstyles that, you know, they look nice, and, you know, you want to give it a try, but I did have my own experiences as well with the hot comb. You know, I'm not too old, but I'm not too young either as well. So, you know, I've had those experiences with the hot combs, and you know, a lot of the information and everything that you were sharing today, you know, it's very pleasant, but at the same time, from my own understanding, you know, for us young men, myself going through it, you know, your hair is pretty much your uniform. You know, for a very long time, it takes a, I get, for me, my own personal experience with my hair, it took a long time for it to get to where it could fall down to my shoulders. So, you know, going through that process, knowing, understanding that, you know, I do want those hairstyles, I do want to get my hair braided, I do want to do these other things, but I know that women, it was normal for women to go ahead and put extensions in their hair and things of that nature. But for a young male, you know, putting an extension in your hair, that wasn't the norm. You know, you might as well just go ahead and get it hot combed, or figure out a way to get it straightened, and you just wear it straight until your hair gets long enough to that point to get it braided or things of that nature. I did experience having a jerry curl, things of that nature, putting those harsh chemicals in your hair as well. Um, and when I went through the process, you know, for that moment in that time period, I felt great. I felt accepted. I felt like I was somebody different. But then, you know, when you go in water gets onto your hair, or you go to wash your hair out, you know, it goes back to its natural form. Then you're just like, dang, I did all that work. I spent all that money to get this desired look. And just within a certain instance, you know, your hair is back to its natural form. So for me, you know, just understanding that as for a man, you know, I embrace it. I have gray in my beard. I'm embracing the gray in my beard, you know, just going through that experience as a young man, and now being a man myself. If I did have the hair, I probably would rock dreads, or more of those natural looks, and not be so eager to want to flat iron my hair or try to make it look a certain way. You know, I'm just gonna embrace it the way it is. You know, not too often do you get experiences like this where we're sitting down on a Zoom, and, you know, there's somebody with a lot of information and they want to share the Crown Act and things of that nature. You know, for our youth, you know, we always want to give them information that's going to inspire them and uplift them, and let them know, hey, it's okay to look the way you look. It's perfect on how your hair looks, how you feel. That's all okay. And this is an actual act that's put in place for you to do that. So that's all I have to share on that for as far as a male.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And it was one thing that I saw on Facebook. It was funny, but it was true. The gentleman was on the plane, and they know the plane, I guess, say the plane was going to the Caribbean, right? So he brought out his camera and he was videotaping all the Black women as they went past him. He was like, you can always tell when a Black woman is going on vacation because they have braids, because they know they want to swim. They know they want to, you know, they're going to get active. You know, so it was funny because it was like every Black woman that got on the plane that was going to the Caribbean had braids, because it's like, okay, I want my hair braided because I know I'm going to have fun, because if I perm it, you know, like I said, it's going to go back to its natural form, and I'm not going to be able to, you know, do what I want to do with it. But with that said, the mic is open. We got a few more minutes before you're asked to do the survey. Did anybody else want to share anything?
I see, Hazel, that there's a hand up from Charisse.
All right, Charisse.
Mhm.
You can unmute, Charisse.
Hi, everyone. So
Hi.
yes, I'm Sharice. And basically, I definitely correlate with a lot of these different topics that you brought up, especially being someone of mixed race and being surrounded by family members that are mixed race. And the thing that isn't talked about a lot, like you said, is the whole dynamic of when a child who has a parent, let's say the woman, right? The mom is of a lighter descent and is not African descent and doesn't know how to take care of that kind of hair. It's the almost like the responsibility of the other women of that come in and really teach, and it becomes this bonding thing. And to see that firsthand, right? And to be a child of, like I said, with curly hair, told, I remember going to the hair salon every 2 weeks. My mom made sure I went to the hair salon because my mama did not know how to do hair because she definitely had some straight hair. Okay. And to hear these women saying like, oh, you need to put a perm in that child's head. Oh, you need to put a perm. And I remember consistently going and hearing that all the time. And it was my aunts and everybody else of more C4 styled hair saying, no, we can train it, you can wash it, you can condition it, you can get it to be manageable, right? That's what they would say in my family, manageable. So to now see that it's something where my child doesn't have to go through that conversation of put a perm in that child's head. It's more of, oh, let's do this. Let's put this conditioner in. Let's do this. There's things on that she can experience in the market as a child. For me, that grew up in the 90s, that wasn't so much the case. I remember singing Just For Me all the time, as a kid. So it's really cool to see the dynamics of those things changing and it's being embraced.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for sharing. Again, there's not a lot of conversation or open conversation when it comes to biracial, where the conversation is held about, again, like you said, when one family member may be two different races and the child may have hair where, as you said, the mother may not know what to do with the child's hair, and either they cut it, keep it cut, or they just let it go in this natural form. And oftentimes what happens is the kid goes to school and they're teased and they're bullied, about their hair. And it's a traumatic experience that carries on with them. And again, we're talking about, mental health, and it's something that affects them for years.
I just
Anybody
wanted
else?
to jump in and chime in on that as well, because I am that the person that's in the partnership of parents. I am the African American in my partnership, and with that, it did stir up a lot of questions. My son is he has a in between the what you would call kinky, wavy, and coarse. He's like right in the middle of it. And he went through that experience as well, and I had to sit down and talk to him. Fortunately enough, I was able to have my own experiences with hairs, and what Sharice just said, training your hair. That was something that I had to learn very quickly as well. As when your hair is short enough, where it's short but it's not too long, you can train your hair to lay down, but it's a process. You do have to condition, you do have to wash, and things of that nature, and buy certain products to go ahead and help your hair be trained to do those things. Versus now, my son is growing up and he sees all his friends and he's trying to do all these different hairstyles, and I had to sit down and have that moment with him to let him know, hey, your hair could look like that, but there's a process that you got to do. You can't just wake up and just put water in your hair and go out the door and your hair's gonna look the way you want it to. You do have to sit there and put something in, some conditioner or leave-in conditioner, and style your hair to the likings of what you want. You're not gonna get that desired straight look that you're really looking for. You can make it to where you can have it to where you're comfortable with the way you want to wear your hair.
Thank you. And there was
This
a
is
question.
April.
Go ahead, April.
This is April Gillis with Healthy Heritage, to piggyback off of what Ms. Phyllis has shared, and also Sharice just brought up the product Just For Me. I remember using that product as a child as well. And there's a study that's out called The Right to Know. And I remember sitting at a table, I think we were at UC Berkeley with the public health and our other partners with Healthy Heritage, almost in tears, because The Right to Know actually tested some of the chemicals in the Just For Me products targeted to kids. and it was found to be more toxic than Kaboom cleaning product. Think about that. Kaboom, which we use to clean, and the chemicals that were in the Just For Me targeted to kids was more toxic. And it took getting those products tested in a lab to even detect those chemicals because they were not listed on the box. So there's a lot of laws that are changing in California that are requiring labeling laws to change, and for professional products to have their labeling. But we just, for Healthy Heritage and our partners, the latest study just published another article in which we were not only able to interview women of different nationalities and what we're using in our hair and on our bodies and why, but we were also able to take products and send them to a lab to get tested. And this and the Just For Me is an example of why that's so important. We can be using oils and things that we think are natural styles that are protecting us, but with, again, testing these products and sending them to the labs, we're finding that there's things such as formaldehyde or formaldehyde releasing chemicals that may be listed, may be present, but not listed. So that continuous accountability is so important. And again, we cannot believe that just because it's protective style, that the products we put in our hair, there's still exposure at so many levels. So again, thank you for this presentation. Thank you for bringing this to the forefront and helping us all to understand that it's not just about preference, but there's our health. It's a public health crisis, and it needs to be continued to be spoken about. And thank you again, Ms. Phyllis, for the opportunity to sit at the table and have these conversations as a millennial. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you for sharing. There's a question in the chat that says, does Crown Act cover the problem of stores putting Black hair products in locked cabinets? Not that I'm aware of. The Crown Act is really a law that put policies in place that says employers cannot discriminate against an individual for wearing their natural hair, either, you know, to work, or they can't deny you a job because I decided I'm wearing braids, or because I decided, you know, I'm wearing the Bantu knots, or the fact that, you know, I decided that I'm going to wear my natural hair. That's what that's about. Now, why they're locking them up, I do know that some stores in some areas will lock up products for whatever reason, but the Crown Act, as far as I know at this point, doesn't have anything to do with the stores locking up those products. But I can go back to, you know, something that April just shared. We are starting to find that, you know, some of these products are toxic, you know, and maybe they should be locked up. Okay, were there any other questions or comments?
Yes, there's another question about if the group can get Healthy Heritage information.
Can Phyllis or someone from your team, can you put your information in the chat?
Yes, April, we will do that. Thank you.
And I just wanted to put it out there for you all. And Phyllis, I feel like I'm giving you free advertising, but Phyllis has been doing this every year. They do a big, you know, fair, and it is surrounded on hair. She just did one this summer after coming out of the pandemic, and I believe, Phyllis, correct me if I'm wrong, you've been doing this for about 10 years, and it's an opportunity to come out and just celebrate our natural hair.
Yes, ma'am. And it's called, Hazel?
My health, what is it? My hair, my health.
Yes, My Hair, My Health. And it's the last Saturday in August each year. And we are celebrating, I believe this year, or 2023 will be our 23rd year. And it's wonderful. And it will be at Fairmont Park. And it's it features healthy lifestyles and healthy hair and body care um, information, and it's open to the public. We focus on African American women because who does? We need to focus on ourselves, but we love everyone and we welcome everyone.
Thank you. And before, I turn it back over to the coordinator, again, I still want to reflect on Andrew Young, the young man. And one of the problems that we're finding, again, that I want to put out there is we need more therapists and coaches that look like us, that can represent us, who can understand, what we're going through. Because every time I think about this young man and that look on his face, even though he won that match, right? This is something that's going to haunt him. So we need more Black therapists in the mental health field to be able to have these conversations, because it's about healing. Dakota, I see your hand.
Yeah, Hazel, thank you so much for this presentation. When I heard it, it was going to be 90 minutes long. I thought, what can you talk about here for 90 minutes? I had no idea. The lengths that oppressive systems will go to in order to maintain their power, the sneaky ways around it. Well, let's make sure they have to cover their hair, or the barbershop, right? Let's take away their gathering places. And I think about the time and money involved in straightening, and how and as a woman, I can relate to that, as long as they keep you busy, taking care of this, you don't have the time or energy left to dismantle racist, systems. And then the last thing I wonder about, when you talked about the 60s and the big afros, at the same time that was happening, the girl hippies, if I remember right, their hair was getting straighter and straighter, right? So it's like the dominant culture tries to separate itself away, right? I don't know if that's true, but that sort of seems like what happened. Thank you again.
You're welcome. And it's funny you mentioned the 60s with the hippies, because even back then, and if we look at it on both sides of the fence, even back then, for that long hair that the white men wore, that was frowned upon. It was like, oh, no, men shouldn't have long hair. And it just goes to show how things have evolved, in across the line, so to speak. But more so, like you said, in the African American communities, being told that, your natural hair is unacceptable. And now how we've been resilient and we're taking our power back that says no. So with that said, I hope that, you guys got something out of this. I hope that there's been some validation. I hope that there's been some healing. And I hope that, again, we can continue to be more inclusive. We can be more accepting, and have those conversations. And I think more studies or more gatherings need to be done with the biracial community, so that, again, they can feel included and accepted, and to validate their feelings, because I don't think enough conversation is being held on that side of the table. So Mindy, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Hazel, for that presentation. It was very interesting, and I appreciate you drawing attention to the fact that we do need more African Americans in the helping field and the professions and caring for mental health, and more representation in that way. I had a question before I send the survey link. Is being a therapist myself and not African American, how can I support and engage with those that I serve, or to be an ally or support? Like, what would be the best recommendation you have for folks that are in that situation?
I would say basically ask questions, meet the person where they are, and learn as much, probably within hopefully your circle of people of color, and be able to have the conversation, because I think for the most part, people are afraid to have the conversation.
Thank you so much. It was really a fascinating presentation. I know that there was also another question in the chat from Nicolette about where we can find this recording. We are recording this presentation, and pending some permissions that we will proceed with perhaps sharing that out. We'll kind of wait to partner with Hazel to see how this is going to be shared. But I'm going to go ahead and drop the survey link in the chat so that we could have some time to fill that out. But thank you all for attending, and we'll just take some minutes to complete the survey. Oh, somebody's speaking? Sorry.
Okay. It's Phyllis,
Hi,
and
Phyllis.
hi. I just wanted to answer, piggyback on what Hazel just responded to your question, how you could help, or people of your concern could help. Empathy. It's hard. Just empathize. One of the things, because Healthy Heritage, we're in the community and we're trying to, find as many resources as we can to deliver to our community, because we focus on the African American community. And just empathy. It's almost, what I hear a lot is that if they find someone outside of their, or I don't know how do you say it, outside their community, outside of looking like whatever you want to call it, they feel like they don't understand what they're feeling. So if somehow we can have empathy for all, all of us are not immigrants. All of us are not, enslaved decades. All of us are not, born with silver spoon. Whatever the picture looks like, empathy. That's what I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Phyllis. It was a very informative presentation today with Hazel, and also with Phyllis and our group here. And just thank you very much. And I think this is going to be helpful in for our providers and learning more about the community and how to best serve and best provide that empathy to connect and to support them as well. So thank you all so much for coming. And we look forward to seeing you at one of our future presentations. And just thank you. And thank you, Ms. Hazel.
Again, I echo that. Thank you. I appreciate you all coming. I appreciate you being engaged. Thank you all so very much.